What if I told you that the real reason many older men stop caring about women has nothing to do with bitterness, heartbreak, or giving up on love, and everything to do with a realization that arrives later in life? A realization so powerful that once a man sees it, he can never look at relationships the same way again. Right now, there are thousands of older men quietly stepping back, not because they cannot date, not because women are no longer interested in them, and certainly not because they have suddenly become cold or emotionally unavailable. The truth is far more complex than most people realize. What is happening is that many older men have reached a stage in life where they finally see relationships, happiness, and themselves with a clarity they never possessed in their younger years. And before we go any further, I want to ask you something. Have you ever reached a point in life where what once seemed important suddenly lost its grip on you? Maybe it was chasing approval. Maybe it was trying to impress people who never truly appreciated you. Maybe it was staying in situations that drained your energy because you believed that was simply what life required. If you've ever experienced that shift, let me know in the comments. I genuinely want to hear your perspective, because what we're discussing today goes much deeper than dating. It's about personal growth, emotional freedom, and understanding what truly brings peace into our lives. I'm Mary Smith, host of Senior Mindful Living YouTube channel. One of the biggest misunderstandings about older men is the assumption that they stop caring because they become cynical. Many people imagine a man reaching his 60s or 70s carrying around years of disappointment and deciding that relationships are no longer worth the effort. While that may happen in some cases, it is not what drives the majority of men who quietly step away from the pursuit of romance. What often happens is something far less dramatic. Life teaches them. Year after year, relationship after relationship, success after failure, they begin gathering lessons that no book could ever teach. They discover patterns. They learn what creates stability and what creates chaos. They begin recognizing which experiences leave them feeling fulfilled and which leave them feeling exhausted. And perhaps most importantly, they begin asking questions they never asked when they were younger. Questions like, is this relationship actually improving my life? Does this person bring me peace? Am I happier because of this connection, or am I simply afraid of being alone? These are powerful questions because most people spend decades avoiding them. When we are young, attraction often feels like enough. Excitement feels meaningful. Chemistry feels like destiny. We assume that strong emotions automatically signal compatibility. But life has a way of challenging those assumptions. Consider a man named David. For most of his adult life, David believed that success in relationships required sacrifice. Whenever conflict appeared, he tried harder. Whenever problems emerged, he carried more responsibility. Whenever a relationship felt unbalanced, he convinced himself that patience would eventually fix everything. For years, he gave and gave and gave. Then one day, after yet another exhausting relationship, he spent several months alone. At first, the silence felt uncomfortable. Then something unexpected happened. He began sleeping better. His stress levels dropped. His hobbies returned. His friendships improved. He laughed more. And for the first time in years, he realized something that completely changed his perspective. The peace he felt alone was greater than the peace he had experienced in many of his relationships. That realization changed everything. Now, notice what happened here. David didn't stop believing in love. He didn't become bitter. He didn't start hating women. He simply discovered the value of peace. Psychologists often talk about something called emotional cost. Every relationship, friendship, or social connection carries emotional costs and emotional rewards. Healthy relationships provide support, safety, companionship, and emotional nourishment. Unhealthy relationships consume energy faster than they replenish it. The older people become, the more aware they tend to be of those emotional costs. Why? Because time begins to feel different. When you're 25, a difficult relationship might feel like a learning experience. When you're 65, it can feel like spending precious years in unnecessary stress. That shift changes priorities dramatically. This is why many older men become more selective, not because they care less, because they understand more. And here's something fascinating that relationship researchers have repeatedly found. As people age, many become increasingly focused on emotional well-being rather than status, excitement, or external validation. They begin valuing meaningful experiences over dramatic ones. In simple terms, peace becomes more attractive than excitement. And that can be difficult for younger people to understand. A younger man may be drawn toward intensity. An older man is often drawn toward stability. A younger man may tolerate endless uncertainty because he believes things will improve. An older man recognizes patterns much sooner. He understands that if a relationship begins with constant tension, it often continues that way. This doesn't make him pessimistic. It makes him realistic. Another reason many older men quietly withdraw is because they eventually become aware of something they have carried for years without fully recognizing it. Exhaustion. Not physical exhaustion. Emotional exhaustion. Many men spend decades being providers, protectors, problem solvers, and supporters. They show up for spouses, children, parents, coworkers, and friends. They handle responsibilities that often go unnoticed because they're expected to handle them. And here's the difficult truth. Sometimes those efforts are appreciated. Sometimes they aren't. Many older men quietly carry memories of sacrifices nobody remembers. The overtime hours, the financial stress, the sleepless nights, the worries they kept to themselves, the burdens they carried without complaint. Over time, some begin to wonder whether anyone truly saw the weight they were carrying. Not because they wanted applause, because they wanted understanding. There's an important psychological distinction here. People don't just need love, they need recognition. Human beings have a deep desire to feel seen, to feel understood, to feel valued not only for what they provide, but for who they are. When that need goes unmet for years, something interesting happens. People stop asking for recognition. They stop explaining themselves. They stop seeking validation. Instead, they quietly pull back. This is why many older men appear indifferent when, in reality, they are simply protecting themselves from further disappointment. And there's a difference between being indifferent and being selective, a huge difference. Imagine walking into a restaurant after eating thousands of meals throughout your life. When you were younger, you might have been willing to try anything. Now you're far more selective. Not because you hate food, because you know what you enjoy. Relationships often follow the same pattern. Experience refines standards. Experience clarifies priorities. Experience teaches boundaries. One of those boundaries involves drama. Let's be honest. Most people have encountered individuals who seem to create chaos wherever they go. There's always conflict, always tension, always another crisis, always another emotional storm. When younger, many people tolerate these situations because they mistake intensity for connection. Older men often see it differently. They've lived through enough emotional storms to understand that constant chaos is not passion. It's instability. And instability becomes increasingly unattractive with age. Think about the last truly peaceful day you experienced. A day without conflict. A day without emotional pressure. A day where you felt calm, grounded, and content. How valuable was that feeling? Now imagine someone repeatedly disrupting that peace. Suddenly, the attraction, excitement, or chemistry may no longer seem worth the cost. This is one reason older men become highly sensitive to relationship dynamics. They aren't looking for perfection. They are looking for compatibility. They're looking for someone whose presence makes life easier rather than harder. And that distinction changes everything. Another realization arrives later in life that many people never expect. The discovery that happiness and relationships are not the same thing. For decades, society often teaches men that happiness will arrive when they find the right partner. The message appears everywhere. Find someone, get married, build a life together. Then you'll be complete. But many older men eventually learn something surprising. A relationship can enhance happiness, but it cannot create it. And that's a lesson many people spend their entire lives trying to understand, because genuine fulfillment often comes from within. It comes from purpose, meaning, friendships, growth, health, faith, family, personal passions. When those things are present, relationships become additions rather than necessities. That mindset transforms the way older men approach dating. They stop asking, "Who can complete me?" and start asking, "Who complements the life I've already built?" The difference is enormous. A person seeking completion often tolerates unhealthy situations out of fear. A person seeking companionship has choices, and choices create freedom. Perhaps that is one of the most powerful psychological shifts that occurs with age. Freedom stops feeling lonely and starts feeling valuable. Because once a man learns how to enjoy his own company, something remarkable happens. He stops settling. He stops chasing. He stops forcing connections that don't feel right. Instead, he becomes willing to wait, willing to walk away, willing to remain single until something genuinely meaningful appears. Next, we're going to explore one of the most surprising reasons many older men become happier alone than they ever expected. Why self-respect becomes stronger with age, how modern dating has changed the way many men view relationships, and the powerful distinction between rejecting love and protecting peace. Because the biggest truth of all may not be that older men stop caring about women. It may be that they finally learn exactly who and what deserves their care. As we continue, it's important to understand something that many people never fully appreciate until later in life. Older men do not suddenly wake up one morning and decide they no longer want companionship. Human beings are social creatures. Most people, regardless of age, still desire connection, understanding, affection, and meaningful relationships. What changes is the standard. The older a man becomes, the more clearly he understands the difference between being alone and being at peace. And those two things are not the same. This is where many people misunderstand what psychologists sometimes call the solitude paradox. From the outside, a man living alone may appear lonely. People assume something must be missing. They wonder if he secretly wishes he had someone beside him. Sometimes that's true, but often something entirely different is happening. Many older men discover that solitude gives them something they spent decades searching for in relationships: freedom. Not freedom from love, freedom from pressure, freedom from constant compromise, freedom from emotional turbulence, freedom to spend time exactly as they choose. Imagine a man who spent 30 or 40 years balancing work responsibilities, family obligations, financial pressures, and relationship expectations. For decades, nearly every decision required consideration of someone else's needs. Then suddenly, life becomes quieter. He chooses how to spend his morning. He decides where to go. He organizes his day according to his own priorities. What begins as independence gradually transforms into something deeply satisfying. The quiet becomes comforting. The routine becomes meaningful. The simplicity becomes valuable. And once someone experiences that kind of contentment, they become extremely protective of it. This is one reason many older men appear selective in dating. They're not evaluating whether a woman is attractive enough. They're evaluating whether her presence improves a life they already enjoy. That is an entirely different mindset. A younger man may ask, "How can I get this relationship?" An older man often asks, "Will this relationship genuinely improve my quality of life?" The first question is driven by desire. The second is driven by wisdom. There is another important factor that deserves attention: self-respect. One of the greatest psychological transformations that occurs later in life is the development of stronger personal boundaries. Many older men look back on their younger years and recognize situations they tolerated that they would never accept today. They remember relationships where they constantly apologized to keep the peace, situations where their needs were ignored, moments when they accepted treatment that conflicted with their values. At the time, they may have believed compromise required those sacrifices. With age comes perspective, and perspective often reveals patterns. An older man begins recognizing subtle forms of disrespect much faster than he once did. Not because he has become overly sensitive, because experience has taught him what unhealthy dynamics look like. Sometimes disrespect arrives loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly. It appears through constant criticism, dismissive comments, lack of appreciation, broken promises, one-sided effort, repeated disregard for boundaries. Younger men often spend tremendous energy trying to fix these situations. Older men frequently choose a different approach. They leave. Not dramatically, not angrily, not with endless arguments. They simply create distance. And perhaps one of the most misunderstood aspects of maturity is this: people who truly value themselves rarely spend much time convincing others to value them. They recognize when respect is absent, and they move on. This connects directly to another reason many older men become less interested in pursuing relationships. They no longer seek validation the way they once did. When men are younger, attention often feels incredibly important. Being desired feels meaningful. Being chosen feels significant. Many tie their self-worth to external approval without even realizing it. But life has a way of changing those priorities. After decades of achievements, failures, lessons, and personal growth, many older men stop measuring themselves through the opinions of others. Their identity becomes internal rather than external. This is incredibly powerful psychologically, because when self-worth comes from within, people become far less vulnerable to manipulation. They become harder to pressure, harder to control, harder to influence through approval or rejection, and that independence changes how they approach relationships. They no longer pursue connection because they fear being alone. They pursue connection because they genuinely enjoy sharing life with someone compatible. If compatibility isn't present, they are perfectly willing to continue enjoying the life they already have. Now let's talk about something that often creates strong reactions whenever it's discussed: modern dating. Whether people agree or disagree, many older men feel that the dating landscape has become increasingly complicated. Technology has changed relationships. Social expectations have changed. Communication has changed. The pace of dating has changed. For some older men, this environment feels unfamiliar and exhausting. Many describe feeling as though relationships now come with endless negotiations, unclear expectations, and emotional complexity that didn't seem as prominent in earlier decades. Whether that perception is entirely accurate isn't really the point. The important thing is that it influences behavior. Psychology teaches us that people act based on what they believe to be true. And if a man believes dating will create more stress than fulfillment, he naturally becomes less motivated to participate. This is especially true if he already enjoys his life. Why voluntarily enter situations that appear complicated if your current life already feels peaceful? That question becomes increasingly common with age, and perhaps that's why so many older men appear detached from dating culture. Not because they are incapable of love, not because they are emotionally unavailable, because they have become more intentional. Intentional people are often mistaken for uninterested people, but the two are completely different. An intentional person simply refuses to invest energy where the return is unlikely to justify the cost. There is another lesson many older men eventually learn, and it may be the most important lesson of all. Not every relationship deserves to survive. That statement may sound obvious, yet countless people spend years trying to preserve relationships that consistently damage their well-being. They stay because of history. They stay because of guilt. They stay because they fear change. They stay because leaving feels difficult. But age often strips away those illusions. Older men understand something younger men frequently struggle to accept. Time is finite. And when time feels finite, priorities become crystal clear. Every year becomes more valuable. Every month becomes more meaningful. Every day matters more. As a result, many older men become extremely protective of how they spend their emotional energy. They ask questions like, does this relationship bring peace? Does it encourage growth? Does it create trust? Does it add value? Or does it repeatedly create stress, confusion, and emotional exhaustion? These questions aren't signs of selfishness. They're signs of wisdom. And they often lead to a conclusion that surprises many people. The conclusion that quality matters far more than quantity. One meaningful relationship is worth more than 10 superficial ones. One trustworthy partner is worth more than endless attention. One peaceful connection is worth more than constant emotional excitement. This brings us to perhaps the biggest misconception of all. Older men do not stop caring about women. They stop caring about relationships that require them to abandon themselves. They stop caring about constant drama. They stop caring about one-sided effort. They stop caring about approval. They stop caring about proving their worth. What they continue caring about is authenticity, respect, loyalty, kindness, consistency, emotional safety, mutual appreciation. In many ways, older men become romantics of a different kind. Not because they believe in fairy tales, because they believe in substance. Surface-level attraction may still capture attention, but character keeps it. Physical beauty may create interest, but emotional maturity creates commitment. Excitement may spark a connection, but peace sustains it. And perhaps that's why many older men appear different from their younger selves. Their priorities have evolved. Their standards have sharpened. Their understanding has deepened. They have learned through experience that happiness is fragile, peace is precious, time is limited, and relationships should enhance life, not diminish it. So if there is one lesson at the heart of everything we've discussed today, it is this. Older men do not withdraw from women because they have stopped believing in love. They withdraw from situations that require them to sacrifice their peace in exchange for companionship. There is a profound difference between those two things. A man who protects his peace has not given up. A man who values himself has not become cold. A man who chooses carefully has not become indifferent. He has become wise. And wisdom often looks very different from the outside. Sometimes wisdom looks like walking away. Sometimes wisdom looks like waiting. Sometimes wisdom looks like enjoying your own company while refusing to settle for less than you deserve. The truth is that many older men have finally learned something people spend a lifetime trying to understand. A relationship should not feel like a burden you must carry. It should feel like a blessing you are grateful to share. And when the right person enters your life, they won't demand that you sacrifice your peace. They will help protect it. If this conversation resonated with you, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments. Have you noticed this shift in yourself or in someone you know? Your experiences may help someone else feel understood. And if you enjoy these deeper discussions about relationships, attraction, human behavior, and the psychology behind meaningful connections, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss future conversations. Thank you for spending this time with me today. And remember this: the strongest sign of emotional maturity is not how desperately someone chases love. It's how carefully they protect their peace while remaining open to the kind of love that truly deserves a place in their life. The right relationship will never force you to choose between happiness and connection. The right relationship will give you both.